Granda, neu noswaith one, I think. So good afternoon or good evening as it's soon drawing in this evening. So I'm Rachel, and I'm very conscious that I stand between sort of a panad and a bit of shortbread for you. So I'll try and make the next, I've only got a few slides, you'll be glad to hear, and I'm very keen on actually discussing what I want to talk about rather than perhaps death by PowerPoint. So I'm Rachel. I'm very fortunate that I know a lot of you actually in the room already. I've been with HCC now for about 6 weeks, having worked previously within the industry as a consultant in sustainability, working across dairy and red meat supply chains. So what I want to talk to you today is actually, first of all, what is sustainability? It's one of those words we've already heard today. I've had some really good segues in. Also, I think maybe a bit of a gauntlet thrown by David as well. And I also want to talk about why it matters to us as farmers. I also want to show us actually where we're already at in Wales at the moment, but more importantly, what we need to do next and where we need to go. So if I can just have my first slide, please. Maybe my second slide, sorry. Right, so sustainability, it's one of those words, despite it being in my job title for a number of years now, that actually, what does it mean? We bounce it around all the time. And so I think it's actually important we start to really define it and what it means to us, and what it means as part of our brands, but what it means to us as producers here in Wales. And for me, I mean, I think this is a really nice summing up in terms of what it means. But it's about sustainable food production systems. And actually it's working with nature and ensuring that we've got economic sustainability within our food systems. And I think it's about sustaining, it's about being continuous, it's about being here in the future. And for me, it's really important that we actually hold on to that. And it's really important that sustainability features through everything we do, that we integrate it. It's not a pillar that sits as a silo, but actually integrates through all our food systems, all our conversations, and actually all our management at farm level. And I'm really keen that actually we already demonstrate a really good way of producing food, but in a really environmentally effective way. What I do think links really nicely to sustainability is efficiency. And I think sometimes as farmers, we don't need to be defensive about the word efficiency. I see it as a massive opportunity, and it walks hand in hand with farm sustainability, especially when we've already mentioned carbon. And for those out there that perhaps have heard me talk before, I'm a bit of a carbon geek. And actually, carbon efficiency, it's all about business efficiency. And actually, why should we be ashamed of that? Why do we not want to sort of tackle and jump on any of the technologies and new practices? And actually, what really makes our business much more efficiency and much more sustainable. Now, if we just move on. Now, why does sustainability matter? And I mean, unless you've been hiding under a rock for the last couple of years, sustainability is the new word. Everybody's talking about it. I mean, I've been about for the last few weeks at various conferences and talks, and everyone's talking about it, which is great for me because it means that I'm no longer the weirdo that might have been sort of sat in the back office somewhere. It's really sort of front and centre. And why it matters is because it's a global issue. It matters because it is real. It matters because it's bigger than us. I'm sorry, it's bigger than Wales. It's bigger than farming. It is a big issue. So we are you're already in both a climate crisis and a nature crisis, and they're intrinsically linked. And these are just some sort of snippets. The ones from The Guardian, a lot of these came about last August, which is when the IPCC issued its 6th report. I mean, they didn't mince their words. We are talking doomsday, sort of code red for humanity. But there was the overriding message, actually, that it was all recoverable. If we act now, we can reverse it. We had similar messages last week, but also I've got some snippets as well here from the climate change news, and it's to illustrate actually that this is a global issue. Although perhaps sometimes it feels like it's targeting us as Welsh farmers, it matters globally, and therefore in the context of HCC and what we do, it matters to our consumers and our bigger market. So it's really important that it really matters to us. And it goes back actually to a comment that Leslie made in the opening VT. Believe it or not, the biggest threat to food security in the long term is climate change. And we mustn't lose sight of that. I mean, I like to think in terms of sort of the short, the medium, and the long-term threats, but we can't take our eyes off the long-term threats. It's really important that we understand the way we farm. And actually, this summer, like no other, demonstrated actually what the effects of climate change can do in terms of managing our farms effectively and the challenges that we face in the future. Now, it does feel quite pertinent, perhaps, that actually we're here this week during the opening days of COP27. And, sorry, I'm just going to take a drink a minute. And what's significant about COP this year, although it was in the UK last year, farming and food wasn't really on the agenda. So although it's on the agenda for us, and although there was a lot of efforts in terms of unions and other sort of groups to really put it on the agenda, it wasn't last year. Now this year, it absolutely is. It's the first year in nearly 30 years of COP. And actually, there's a food and agriculture pavilion there. And the idea, it's about focusing the agenda on transformational agricultural food systems. I mean, what a year to be part of that. And therefore, I think it's a real opportunity for us. But what it does is it ensures that actually sustainability absolutely matters, because we need to be sustained as farmers in terms of how we produce our food, but also to make sure that we're there on the land. So not only it matters in terms of the global context, but also, we've already had questions in terms about a sustainable farming scheme. And actually, we've got loads of challenges ahead. And I think I'm quite candid, and actually, I can't underestimate the challenge that we face probably over the next 5 to 10 years in terms of climate, in terms of policy change, in terms of economic change. But I actually think they're really exciting. I'm not frightened by them, but I do think we need to be prepared for them, and I think that's really key for me. For that. But so moving on in a really sort of positive way would be on the next slide. This is where we're at already. So. Hopefully you'll all be aware of our Welsh Way document that was produced sort of about this time in 2020. Now this was an industry-leading document. No one had really done it before. It absolutely flew the flag for Welsh agriculture and underpinned in a data-driven way about how sustainable we are. And it was picked up by the press, and I think it's a fact that we're still referring to it now, and we hear stakeholders referring to it, we hear government referring to it. And what it did is it really put us out there in terms of where we're at, and we're starting from an amazing place. Now, what we did a year ago was we had the Perfecting the Welsh Way. Now, this was a document that was much more farmer-focused, because although we're in a great place, we can always improve. And if anyone thinks they can't, it's just not a great way to be. And what the Perfecting the Welsh Way is, it gave some really good sort of nuggets of information, guidance, based on what we know from the data in terms of where we can focus on our farming businesses to be even more carbon efficient. And I am really keen, now that I'm in HCC, and that we've got a really fresh focus, and actually we've got some mega challenges ahead, that what we do is we build on these documents. So on my next slide, please. Right, so these are my 3 priorities. Now, building on what we've already done with the Welsh Way, I am keen that we really sort of adopt a much more holistic view in terms of our environmental sort of footprint. Now, so although obviously a bit of a carbon geek, I think what we also need to do is make sure we don't miss of all the other amazing bits we do in terms of how we produce food, how we manage our land. And I'm an absolute advocate that we start to look at total environmental impact. So we look at biodiversity, we look at natural resource management, we look at our soils, and actually we look at our communities and what else we do and deliver as Welsh farmers. And therefore, going forward, this is what I think we need to build upon on the Welsh Way going forward. I also think that what we need to do to achieve that is we need it to be evidence-based. We can't say things because we know them, because we feel them, because we do them every day and we think it's the right thing. We've got to prove it. And actually, in the context that perhaps we've just heard from David, it's challenging times out there. We've got to demonstrate to our consumers, whether they're home or abroad, that actually what we're saying is reinforced by data. So I'm absolutely committed that we really make it a data-driven sort of focus in terms of how we demonstrate our total environmental footprint. Now, another thing I'm very keen, I think, in terms of HCC is actually we really start to demonstrate leadership in these areas. Now, we've already touched upon the cost of living crisis and ag inflation. Now, again, we're in a really fortunate position in Wales in terms of how we manage our natural resources. And I'm a big advocate that actually we start to look at making our sector much more circular. So it means actually we start to sort of reduce our reliance on purchase inputs. We work smarter. And I think what it does there, it starts to make us much more resilient and much more sustainable, both from an environmental point of view, but also from a financial point of view. Now, my last message to you, because I'm sure you're all parched and really want a cup of tea, is that, I think what we need to understand is, first of all, we really need to promote this. We need to stop being defensive, but actually promote the amazing stuff we do. But I think also the last message would be that if we don't take ownership of this, then someone else will be. Diolch fawr.